Hey everyone, what you see here is a Street Fighter clone that I built using nothing but AI tools. Everything from the animations, the UI, the gameplay logic were all vibe coded. This also includes the special skills that you see over here as well. So in today's video, I'll be walking you through step by step exactly how I went about building this entire game. And I did not write a single line of code. I did not draw a single sprite. Everything was AI generated. For those of you who are new to this channel, hi, my name is Chong-U, and I believe that anybody, regardless of your background, can learn to make games thanks to the power of AI. I did a majority of this game using Cursor and Opus 4.8. However, I did use Codex as well as the GPT Images 2.0 model to generate the assets for me because these come as part of my ChatGPT subscription as well. I'll show you the workflow that you want to be taking when you're building a game such as this. And these workflows apply regardless of the type of game that you're trying to build. So if you've ever wanted to learn how to make your very own Street Fighter-like game using nothing but AI tools, this video is for you. Now, if you want to get all the resources from today's video, including the full source code of the final game, as well as this cheat sheet that we have here, check out the links in the description below. This will also give you access to my free Insiders Club and mailing list, where you can get all resources such as prompts, source code, templates, and everything else from all of my other videos. If you want to take things a step further, definitely check out gamedev.com, where you'll be able to find specialized game development agent skills, tutorial projects, including a full written step-by-step version of today's game that you'll be able to walk through from start to finish to get a deeper understanding of how to go about building games such as these. So if you want to get hold of these different resources, check out the links in the description below. Okay, just to go into a little bit more detail about what we'll be building today, there's quite a few different features that this game currently allows. Each of the characters has a light attack and a heavy attack. You can see the same that we have for this Jiu-Jitsu fighter on the right over here. But the other thing that I have also implemented is that you'll be able to do things like blocking. So if you try to attack the player while he's blocked, then the amount of damage is a lot less and the person is not hurt as much. And the other things that we were able to create are all of these UI elements that you see over here. So the health, the player portraits, as well as the round timers are all showing up on screen using custom generated sprites. I wanted to also highlight that I managed to do this energy bar over here. And once the energy bar becomes full, you can unleash a special attack that you see over here that has a combo. All right, so let's get started. I knew I wanted to make a Street Fighter clone. However, I wanted to have my own visual style, characters, as well as different mechanics. So the first thing I did was that I did say that I was trying to build a 2D fighting game like Street Fighter. And I did start off with my basic phaser template project that I always used. And I said that consider the architecture for a fighting game. Think about the things that you will need for animation, gameplay logic, and collisions. And the main thing that you see in a fighting game is that the game is going to be very animation heavy because of the different attacks that you might have and all of the different UI elements. Once I had primed that I was making a fighting game, let's focus on generating some concept art using the image gen skill. I did say that I wanted this to not be too complex, recognize that this is a technical demonstration, and I wanted 4 different versions. All right, and so here you can see the 4 different mockups that the image generation came up with. This one is like a dojo. This one is a subway, and I really like this one. This one is like a warehouse by the docks. And this was the one that I chose to go with, which is a rooftop brawler, which is something on top of the rooftop, but it has this really nice cityscape in the background. I posted this on X and asked people to vote which one they wanted. And lots of people voted on this, so I decided to use this as the mockup and concept for my game. All right, so now that this one was done, the first thing that I wanted to do was to extract the backgrounds from this mockup. So what I did was that with this mockup, I simply prompted the AI to give me simply the background image without the characters and without the UI. I also asked it to generate the images that were larger in length than the viewport, because this gives your characters a little bit of room to move left and right so that it doesn't feel so static. And you can see here, I actually played around with a much wider background image, but I felt like this was just a little bit too long. I just wanted to keep it simple. And this one is just large enough to let the characters move a little bit off the screen. So you can see this over here, because we have a slightly longer background image than the viewport. It just gives the stage a little bit more breathing room and more dynamism so that you are not stuck on a single static frame. I actually did play around with asking it to separate it out into different layers because my goal was to have a bit of parallax effect when the players were moving left and right. And you can see my other video where I actually showed you how you can make use of parallax layers to create a depth effect. But in this case, I didn't have enough time and I wanted to focus more on the gameplay mechanics of the combat system, so I never got around to doing it. So the next step is to actually create the characters that I'll be using in the game. And so the way that I did it was I simply went ahead and looked at all of the different images that I had, and I asked the AI to extract out just the character. So in this case, I asked for the brawler on the left-hand side for this image. I did also play around with using this character, but I felt like he looked similar to this character in terms of hairstyle. So I decided to go with this Jujutsu character that's sitting over here. So with this, so you can very simply ask AI, just supply this image and say, I want to extract out my characters because I want to use them as reference images. And for this one, I did it within Codex. So you can see we've managed to extract the character out of the background over here. And you can see this is the green box that I managed to extract out along with the Jujutsu fighter that you see over here. So that's very simple because you can make use of image generation as well as these mockups to pull all of these out as reference images. And the reason why you want to get all of these reference images is that these reference images are going to form like the basis of all your subsequent animations. All right, so now we have that. Now we go about to animating the characters so that we are going to be able to put them into the game. And for this, I make use of a tool that I've been building called Spriterific. And the goal of this tool that you see over here is that given a supplied source image, it will process it to create a game-ready sprite that you can then use within your game. And I've got several videos on how you can do this step by step using any image generation model, whether it's Nano Banana 2 or Images 2.0. But the whole purpose of building this tool is so that I can have a single place that allows me to do this very easily and to visualize the results. So let me just show you the prompt that I use as part of Spriterific. So for example, I said, given the character reference image, think about the images that we're going to use. And then all I needed to do is say, let's use Spriterific to generate the anchor image. This will go ahead and automatically create what we call an anchor image that you have over here. So given a source image, it will normalize everything, put it against a green screen, and creates a neutral facing anchor that will serve as the basis for image consistency for the rest of our animations. And all I have to say is, let's use Spriterific on the chosen anchor for the 2 attack animations. And what it will do is that it will go ahead and generate the animations that you see over here. And how it does so is that, first of all, it uses Grok Imagine to create a movie version of the animation. So you can see that this is the movie version over here. The next thing it does is that it will take out every single frame of this video that you see over here and lay it out. And then after that, it will go ahead and pick a subset of these frames and stitch it together into a sprite sheet that you see over here. And then that's how you get your animation that you use within the game. And Spriterific is quite useful because you can actually pick the frames that you want rather than using the default. And then you can do some additional things such as aligning your sprite if there's any drift. I find that when you use Grok Imagine, you don't actually have much drift because it's all generated from a video, and this already ensures that everything looks consistent, but it's always useful to be able to have that level of control to be able to adjust your images accordingly. So you can see several runs that I did here. This is the heavy kick run. This is the kick animation that was generated from this Grok Imagine video. And then once I knew that it was working correctly, I then went ahead and said, go ahead and generate all the different animations that we would need for this game. So you can see we have a blocking animation, we have crouch, we have being hit, we have an either animation, and we have a jump, and then we have a knockdown as well. And you can see here, sometimes if your prompt isn't correct, can result in animations that don't really look right. So in this case, he shouldn't really be falling with his head on the left. I just went ahead and just re-prompted it so that I was able to get the right animation that I wanted. And you can see here, I did the same thing with this Jujutsu fighter, and I did do it for the boxer as well, but I just decided not to use this character in the game. But you can see Spriterific makes it really easy. You can pass in the source image and then prompt whatever animations that you need, and it automatically gives you game-ready sprite sheets that you can put into the game. I've not released Spriterific yet. I'm still working on it, but if you're interested, I've put a link in the description below where you can register your interest for development update. So now that we've got all of our animations, the thing that I always like to do is to create something called a character gem. If you watch some of my previous videos, you will know why I do this, but I'm going to go through the key elements of a gem. Now, the whole purpose of a gem is to allow you to visualize and to debug and to troubleshoot the animation sprite sheets that you have over here, but in a nice single place. So you can see over here, I can choose whichever character I want and look through any of the animations that I want as well. The key elements are, I need to see the number of frames in the animations, and I should be able to slow it down and pause whenever I want. But the most important thing is that we have these things called bounds. All of the logic is going to be based on not on the entire image, but on bounds or hitboxes. In this case, you want separate hitboxes for collision. Example of this one will be how the character lands on the ground. And the main reason why this is very important is that sometimes you will have additional padding below your character, and you want to make sure that the collision of the character with the ground looks correct. So the main bounds that you will need to have are your collision bounds, and then you want to have your hit bounds. So this will mean that as long as there's an overlap within this area, a hit will register. But then this is the key one. That we have over here. If we take a look at this punch animation and this kick, you will notice that the attack bounce only becomes active at certain frames. So at the 5th, 6th, and 7th frame, this is where the attack bounce actually shows up, because you don't want the attack to register before the character has even finished animating his leg sticking out, okay? And you don't want it to register when he's withdrawing his leg as well. This applies to all of the different characters. So you can see here, if I do a heavy kick, it only registers the attack bounce when it is up over here. And this allows me to adjust it slightly, and then I can just save this. And this editor allows you to ensure that your characters have the right kind of animations, and the hitboxes that you have are activated only at the correct frames. Because you're working with spreadsheets over here, not every single frame is going to be relevant when it comes to particular actions. One of the main things that I learned about building a fighting game is that if you have a blocking mechanic which reduces the damage, you will want to have an additional type of bounce called guard, because this guard box is important. Because if you have different kind of attacks, so for example, if you have a heavy attack that kicks high and the person ends up guarding low, you don't want the guard to register, right? Vice versa, if you are punching at the top and the person is guarding low, you might want the attack to it. All right, so that's the character gym. And once you've gotten hold of that, that's pretty much the key set of things that you will really need to be able to get your game working. So the other thing that I always like to do is, just before I create the main game, is to create something like a playground. And you can see over here, this allows me to very quickly ensure that things are working correctly based on what I've configured in the character gym. So I'm going to turn on all the bounds that you see over here. And you can see if I try to do an attack here, the attack bounce only comes out when the hand has emerged, and the same thing for the kick. Okay? And the other thing that you want to do over here is that you want to take this opportunity to set up configurable parameters, so you can just tweak the feel of the character. Sometimes you will see that the scale of the character may be a little bit off because of the way that the sprites get normalized. This allows you to very quickly just adjust, because I want this character to be a lot larger than what the default scale looks like. The other thing that you can do is you can adjust the speed here. If I change it to 1000, you can see that I move a lot quicker. And then if I change it to 1, you can see this character moves very slowly. So this is very important as part of game development. AI is not going to be able to make your game feel perfectly right. So you want to ensure that you have the opportunity to tweak these parameters as well, because otherwise you will find that it just feels a little bit off. Okay? And the main thing that you want to do over here, whenever you're working with any kind of playground gym, is I always say that I want to be able to save all of these parameters into a JSON file, as you can see over here. And then this JSON file is what is loaded when the actual game starts. All right, so you can see all of these values that you see over here are loaded in from that same JSON file. So just say you're playing the main game now and you spot something that's wrong, you can at least tweak it straight away, and then you can save it, and you have a consistent place to ensure that your experience is correct. One of the things that I realized is that when I generated reverse walking animations, it just didn't look right. So I just changed the logic over here and I said play the walking animation in reverse, and this gave me a much better result. So this is the reason why you want to have a playground, because it allows you to tweak and play around with how your characters are going to look like and how the gameplay is going to feel like before you start wiring it in all within the game. So that's the playground that you have over there. The next thing that I did was I just went into Codex and said I wanted to generate some portraits of these characters. So you can see here, let's generate stylized portraits of the characters based on the reference images. I wanted to have their upper body in distinctive poses, and I want to use them in a character selection screen. And then you can see here, I'm using the image gen scale. And you can see it generated these ones that we have over here. And this was fairly simple to integrate into game. So you can see I made use of these within the character selection screen. And this was the time where I said I wanted to be able to select between different levels. I also wanted a 1v1 versus a 1v AI setting. This allows me to play against AI if you don't have a second player to play with. And I deliberately asked the AI to be fairly naive here, but you can ask your agent to make the AI a lot more realistic and you have a solid result. All right, so once you've got the main menu set up, the main thing is to go into the core combat loop over here. This one is really just about you going ahead and thinking about what goes into the game. So at a countdown timer, we also say that we want it such that we have health for the characters. And when the health depletes, as you see over here, it starts a second round, replenishes the health. And you can see in this little icon that we have over here, it means that I've won the first round. So this is very typical of a fighting game. And I just said that, it's best of 3 matches before the game goes into game over. So that's the core combat loop. Next thing to talk about are the UI elements. I just said, let's generate a UI atlas, right? Using image generation that we can use for the game. We need a health bar with appropriate transparent areas for the health fill and a portrait base to put the character's portrait in. And this is what it generated. You can see it's already put against a chroma background. So you can then use the image generation skill to make this transparent. And you can see that these are all the different elements that it uses as part of the game. These are the props that I generated because I intended to put props in the background, but I never got around to doing it. And then after that, you can simply prompt your agents to integrate this within your game. This was one prompt. I said, let's integrate UI elements in the game. We should lay out the health of 2 characters and their portraits, make it look good. The health bar should be dynamic and change color based on the amount of health left and start blinking. This was the effect that you see over here. Once the health starts depleting, it goes from green and then it goes to yellow. And then finally, when it's red, it starts blinking. And then when the health depletes, the character loses and plays the death animation. Okay, so it's really, I find that it does really well in using AI. I find that the models are really good at integrating UI elements. Like you can see here, I just used a single prompt and it was able to get everything working correctly. All right, so that's pretty much it. Once you've got all of these things, you have a complete fighting game over here. And you can see this is a really very decent result and it's really pretty fun to play, and you can play this on the same machine. And if you want to make this a fully multiplayer game, you can probably use something like Coliseus, and I've got a whole video that talks about how you can write code multiplayer functionality very quite easily using the Coliseus library. The last thing that I wanted to cover is that I wanted to have something called specials. And so this was the final thing that I just wanted to have, just as a nice way to polish up what we have over here. And in this case, it was very simple. I said I wanted to have a special move system. This will involve hitting a specials button when a meter is filled. And I did say that I wanted to have different specials for different characters. And then I said you need a charging special animation, and then it should register multiple hits as opposed to just being a single hit if you're doing a special attack. So let me just explain this in a little bit more detail. So if I play as this character and I'm going to toggle the special, you can see over here, he's going to do something like a spinneroonie. And then you can see that it registers multiple hits in a combo when he's able to perform his special. And that's what I wanted to do. Once I had prompted the mechanics, it implemented it. And then I just made use of Sprite once again to generate all of these special animations that you can see over here. And then it automatically picked the best frames, stitched them together, and then exported it out as a sprite sheet. So this was very easy to do. I then just tweaked it a little bit, saying that I wanted, when the specials happens, I wanted to show the portrait. And then I wanted to have this light box effect where the portrait comes in from the left to give it a bit of a specials effect. So there you have it. That's how you can go ahead and build your very own Street Fighter-like game using AI. And you can just follow the workflow that I use from start to finish. You just want to take things step by step. Don't try to single prompt and say, I'll build me a Street Fighter clone. You probably get a fairly okay result. But whenever you're working on games, you want to take things slowly, build things iteratively, make sure that things look right before you move on to the next step. Whether you're building a fighting game, a platformer, an RPG, or whatever, is to always have gyms so that you can test things like the character animations, you can test things like the background, and then always have a playground so that you're going to be able to test and tweak things like the values of the mechanics as well. All right, so that's it for today's tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it and learned how you can make your very own Street Fighter-like game using nothing but AI tools. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on notifications so that you'll always be the first to know when new content like this drops. And if you haven't seen my other video where I take you step by step from start to finish of how you can build your very own platformer game where you can collect items, fight enemies, and have a level progression, you definitely want to check out this video that you see over here. All right, till next time, I'll see ya.